Hi guys, it's DontPettheCammyChad here, and it's time to talk about the new album from English indie rock band, the Courteeners. Mancunian indie rock band, prominent in the late noughties indie rock scene revival, and they're here with their new album, Mapping the Rendezvous. I started getting into this band around 2008 when they released St. Jude, the first album. Got into that as soon as they released it. Straight up indie rock record, no messing about, and it's brilliant. It is actually a great album. It was followed up by Falcon, and sort of a natural progression, still hook heavy, still brilliant, down to earth lyrics from frontman Liam Frey, and then that was followed up in 2013 by Anna, which was it was an outstanding. You got third album syndrome, but it was an outstanding achievement to sort of make it sound so much like they've come a bit of a way, but they're still making those hooks, still decent on them lyrics, and the guitars and the instrumentation sounding nice and clean. Now, 2014, the year after they released Anna, they released Concrete Love, and I was a bit meh on this album. Probably would have given it about a 5 out of 10. It produced a few bangers, like How Good It Was, Summer, but other than that, I found artistic inspiration lacking. The hooks were weak. Some of the lyrics in places were poorer than on their earlier albums, which made no sense. So you can see why I was a little bit apprehensive going into the new album, Mapping the Rendezvous. Now, this album kicks off with Lucifer's Dreams, a track which I think sounds a lot like White Horses off Concrete Love, their last album. It gets going. It does its job. It sets the album going. There's some nice sort of loud guitars and distortion on this track. I'm not really sure what the lyrical content is talking about. I can't really bother going into it. There's not much sort of there outside of the hook, and the hook's meh as well. So it's kind of it sets a good beat for the album, but it has a lot more to offer than this introducing track. Now, one of the better and more interesting tracks comes at number 3 in the track listed. That is No One Will Ever Replace Us, something along those lines. This was the second single they released from it, and this epitomizes everything that this album does right when it does things right. It's kind of narrative driven, this track. It's about like sort of a little thing going on in a festival, a little sort of mini relationship. He's flirting with this girl, they're running through and they're having fun. And, I've never asked Courteeners to go any deeper than that with lyrical content. And the way it's structured, it flows narratively and lyrically, which I like a lot. The kind of funky guitars, you're going to hear a lot of them on this album. The kind of funky, burp, 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 steady, reoccurring guitars and sort of rigid drum beat. They actually come through quite nicely. I find a lot of the time the instrumentation on the newer Courteeners albums takes some of the emotion out of it. But the way this track is presented and the hooks I think the hook's one of the few hooks on this album which will actually stand the test of time, and it's quite memorable. And the song as a whole is just well-rounded, probably one of my favourite tracks on this album. And the perks of this album, I think, are two-pronged. You have the bangers, or where they attempt the sort of banger, better choruses, scream it out festival-type songs. And you have sort of the more thoughtful songs. And we found on Concrete Love, Courteeners a bit awkwardly, Liam Frey a bit awkwardly diving around topics lyrically. Not really sure. A lot of the time it was awkward. A bit of the time it was thoughtful, but it was sort of sensitive without any sort of purpose. But on this new album, what I've found, which I am actually quite happy about, is them sort of refining this sort of newfound maturity that I have lyrically. The song De La Salle comes straight after No One Will Ever Replace Us, probably my two favourite tracks coming after each other. And it's an acoustic-led track, but it doesn't feel like one of these new wave token acoustic tracks that we get these days. The guitar's kind of gently strummed, but it swings itself about, and that's followed up with the orchestration, which sort of comes in later on in the track, and that brings it down to a sort of drop for the chorus. The lyrical content in this track, it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting, especially for Liam Frey. What he kind of does on this track, he kind of takes historical figures and he sort of puts them alongside, juxtaposition with everyday things, such as something about Jesus. Did he ever get in detention? It's kind of interesting how he looks at those sort of elements of now life, and maybe how the restrictions we've put on society have taken away our creativity and our ability to produce some really influential figures. And it's interesting how he does that. At least maybe it doesn't follow an exact concept like that. Maybe that's not the thought process at all that was going into it. But it sounds thoughtful. But what absolutely baffles me is how on this track, the lyrics are, you know, for a Courteeners song, I wouldn't ask, you know, outstanding lyrics of a Courteeners album. That's not why I came to this album. But you look at a track like Kitchen, and some of these lyrics are dreadful. And the song's hook is probably the worst attempt at a Courteeners hook I've ever heard. After track 4, De La Salle, which is probably one of my highlights, the next few tracks kind of fall into that middle of the road sound, and I really don't know why they do it. I mean, there's the opportunity with the sort of more electronic, rigid, you know, instrumentation that's coming through on this album. I think there is the opportunity to have a bit of fun with it, like they do on No One Ever Loved Places, and they can do it, and on De La Salle. But I think a lot of that is wasted on some of these tracks. Tiptoes, I found to be, I think it was about sex, but I'm not quite sure because he didn't put it across in a smooth way. He wasn't funny about it. And I have expected a ukulele to come through when the sort of bouncing drum beat comes in at the start of this song. It's kind of sickly. Finest Hour attempts again at being a bit thoughtful, but it feels like a token piano effort at times. He's a bit insecure when he's saying I can't compete with that, or, you know, I can't compete with that, or whatever. And it's not in a, you know, I've heard this before. Just because you're not cocky and arrogant like on the first albums doesn't mean you're running any benefit from thinking a bit more about stuff. So I think it just comes off as drawl on this track. I mean, obviously the instrumentation is a nice sort of breakup compared to the sort of rigid attempted bangers we have before it. But I think even the fact this track breaks up tracks, it is followed by the Diatlante, which is, I mean, the lyrics are poor. He rhymes verb with superb. He rhymes it with superb. And that's as interesting as the lyrics in the song get. And yes, I agree, the build-up's nice. You know, it's fast, it's enjoyable. But there's nothing new here. It's not getting me excited in the way maybe Fallowfield Hillbilly would have at this point in the album on St. Jude. But luckily, my friends, he does bring it back for a sweet moment towards the end of the album and the album. I like to pay attention to Modern Love in particular. This track is a little bit better. It is it's sort of him. He's kind of abandoning that sort of basic love attitude towards love that he has on the first couple of albums, and it comes with a hook, and the hook works. Oh my god. It's kind of frustrating up to this point as to how much the tracks don't necessarily stick in your head. But when you reach Modern Love, you know, it's enjoyable with the sort of chilled out downbeat chorus that it has. It's not freaking out about the state of Modern Love. It's just sort of having a laugh. And, you know, the lyrics aren't important in the song. It just sounds good. And there's a backing vocal on the chorus. And that sounds good. I would like to mention the bridge that follows one of the choruses. And just listen to this thing. I think it's about 2 minutes in, and he goes full Jarvis Cocker mode, and it's unbelievable. He does this kind of talk, and I'm talking about talking, and it was cool when Jarvis Cocker did it. It's not cool when Liam Frey does it 20 years later. So not too sure about that, but luckily he launches into another chorus. He puts up another key, and it sounds awesome. So good job on this track. And then you got the song Most Important. It's kind of bland. Reminds me of Beautiful Head off the last album. That was boring and made me want to kill myself, and I had the misfortune of seeing it last live. I think he played it last, which was a nice end to a concert, and it was just kind of soppy but not in an inventive way. And, you know, if you're not being arrogant and making a good hook and you're not being thoughtful, then just don't bother. Really. That's my message for this album. But yeah, it's not quite as excruciating as Beautiful Head, but it's just more drawl. And the album closes out with a sort of bit of an experiment compared to the rest. The 17th, heard this track a while ago, so I'm not going to go on about it, but it's kind of synthesized in places. The piano sort of tinkles over the top of the track. It builds up throughout. It's 5 minutes long. Builds up throughout. It doesn't sound like much of the rest of the album, which is kind of a nice break. And even his vocals kind of falter towards the end. He goes, I don't know what he does, but they kind of break up, and he kind of has a voice crack, and it's kind of cool. We can hear that sort of emotion coming through, because a lot of times on these tracks, even if he's talking about, you know, sex and Tiptoes or whatever, he's not getting very excited about it. So it's nice to hear that on the 17th. So in summary, there's nothing vastly wrong about this album, apart from the lyrics on Kitchen and some of the drawl that comes in the middle. If you put it on, you know, in the background at a barbecue, no one's gonna notice that it's, you know, that some of the tracks are a bit weaker than others. It's gonna sound all right, and I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't object to putting it on in a barbecue. But if you're looking for something that the Courteeners are known for, getting you sort of blood pumping, getting you ready, like songs maybe like Bide Your Time would on the first album, or You Overdid It Doll on the second album, you're not going to find much of that here, maybe in a few places, but none of the songs are without a good moment, and I'd recommend listening to this album, especially if you're a Courteeners fan. If you're not a Courteeners fan, don't listen to this album. It's not gonna, unless you're like middle of the road pop songs. I wouldn't get into this album, but it's nice in places, and it's just unfortunate that songs like De La Salle didn't come with, you know, better counterparts later on and towards the middle of this album. So I'm gonna give 65 out of 100 for this new project from the Courteeners. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed, make sure you drop a like down there, subscribe for more reviews. I'm gonna get back on it. I'm gonna start doing these things because I'm enjoying it. Something to do in it, so right laugh. So I'll catch you guys in the next review. I'm going to do best of 16 lists at the end of the year, so watch out for that, and see you guys soon. Peace.